baby. Come on, get in here. Woo-woo. Okay. Ah, that sure was heavier than it looked. Now, we got it up under the truck. Time to figure out where it's gonna live. Can't live with me, that's for sure. So, it's gonna be facing that direction. All right, we did it. All right, there's a good bit of work. We got it under the truck, we got it pointed in the right direction. What we gotta do now is figure out distance for the transfer case to be back. I kinda hate, I picked this transfer case, number one, because I had it. Number two, because it drops both shafts. I don't want to deal with no bad drive shaft angles, so that's great. Both shafts are dropped. It's like an 8.5 inch drop, I do believe. Very nice. Next issue is how or if to hang it from the transmission. Will it be low enough if I hang it from the back of the transmission and build a coupler to go on to slide onto the spline on the back of the two-wheel drive 400, or should I bring it back, bring it down, build a mid shaft? But a mid shaft can always be a crisis in the making. We can't have it if we decide it can't be so far back that it makes the front drive shaft real long and the rear drive shaft too short, and it also can't put a bad angle on a short mid shaft. That's just asking for problems. So a lot to think about, and I'm going to make this next on my step. I'm going to make this the next step on my list because I need to know how low the cradle will be before I know anything about how I'm going to 4-link this truck. Where is the transfer case? Where's this big giant thing going to go? Will it be centered in the truck? Will it be a little back, a little forward? I want to know all that before I link the truck. When you figure out where your drive shafts will be mounted, then you're going to figure out where your link arms are going to be, basically. Because you want your front link arms to come in right around the same spot your front drive shaft matches up to the transfer case. If you set this way back in the cradle under your truck, and you've got a longer front drive shaft, and say your 4-link is up here, but your front drive shaft bolts over here, now you got different angles, and what happens is you're going to start needing a longer slip yoke. You might have problems with drive shafts binding. Be much better. A lot of times if somebody does that, I've never done it, but what they'll do is say the transfer case is far back, the rear drive shaft will be mated right to the transfer case, but the front drive shaft will have a separate shaft. It'll have a 2-piece shaft, and 1 piece will go to where the 4-link starts on the cradle, and then you have a drive shaft going from that, like a PTO shaft usually to build it out of, or not a carrier bearing. I don't know why you couldn't put a carrier bearing there. No, that's incorrect. My brain got a little confused. No, you wouldn't want to. Well, I mean, I guess it could be a carrier bearing, but a carrier bearing's rubber and it sucks. You want something solid. No big deal. We're not going to run into that issue. This thing's pretty long. If my 4-link's right like this, I got to get a tape measure, and I really got to play around. The motor's still in the truck in the stock motor mounts, so if I measure far back to the back of a two-wheel drive 400, I'll know where the transmission will be. But then again, I could set this down lower and then go ahead and set my motor down lower. But then you run into issues with your oil pan on the axle when it bottoms out. You run into issues with the headers coming out into the frame. So I really might want to keep my stock motor mounts. It's a lot to think about, and it's a lot of fun. And it might take me 6 days, but I'm going to figure out where this transfer case will be when it's done. So I'm sitting on my transfer case here. I got my tape measure in one hand, my chalk in the other hand. And what I did, I'm going to be honest with you, I used my same hand for my tape measure as with my chalk. I don't know if I I can hold the camera with my other hand. I don't know if I do a good job at it, but I definitely can't write with that hand, and I can hardly write with my right hand, so I don't think I could write with my left hand, so I can't use the chalk in my left hand. And as for the tape measure, I don't think that would work very well either in my left hand. Sometimes I'll grab the other end with my left hand, but I use my right hand for both. I use it, and then I hold it. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how I hold a tape measure and chalk at the same time. Maybe I use my elbow or my chin or something to hold the tape measure while I draw. Either way, I sat on this transfer case down on the ground here for about 20 minutes and measured things and drew on things and came up with conclusions and decisions, and I've built a plan, and here it is. This line here clearly marks my Turbo 400 slip yoke, 31 inches from the back of the motor. My transfer case looks like this. That's an exact drawing of it. 9.5 inches between input shaft and output shafts, drop. I want to do a 10-inch drop to the center of the output shafts from the bottom of the frame. This line right here is going to mark the front input of my transfer case coming in from the transmission. It'll be at about this height. It'll be right about the bottom of the frame rail. And this line right here marks right about where I think the center of my slip yoke coming out of my transmission will be. And this line also marks, okay, so here we go, where this line crosses that line will be, we need chalk. I've got an incomplete drawing here. If we carry that line down, this line's perfectly straight. Years and years of drawing lines, I've perfected it. I don't need a straight edge. That's a best line anybody's ever drawn. So this cross section here marks the output of my transmission. This line here, right there, if you drew a line right there, marks the input of my transfer case. So right there you can see the angle of my midshaft and the length. Just like that, it's going to be a 12-inch midshaft with a slip yoke in it for easy removal and accident proof. And that's the angle right there. A nice angle, not too bad. And if I can tilt the motor back a little or lower the motor a little and get that transmission down even lower, the flatter I can get that midshaft, the less issues I'll have. But that looks good. This seems like a good plan. Now, we get to this line here, which marks center of the wheel wells. Center of the wheel wells. Probably not center of the truck, but centered between the wheel wells, which centers me between my tires and axles. Now, I'm putting the center of my transfer case exactly in the center of my wheels. That way, drive shafts will both be the same length, 4-link bars will all be the same length, and everything will look good and work good. Now, 6.5 inches is flange to mount bolts. Now, I wrote that down and it means something very important, but I forget. Okay, now, that means the mount bolts on the transfer case. So 6.5 inches up from my lower output shafts on the transfer case is the flange for the mount bolts on the transfer case. And then they will be 3.5 inches below the frame. So right here in the center, I've got to come down 3.5 inches and then come on over and mount up to the transfer case and do that on both sides. Then my transfer case will be hung under the truck and I will continue building. I can build a tubing cradle. I can build my 4-link mounts. I can totally build the undercarriage of the frame and put a suspension under the truck. Okay, 13.1/8 inches across. So my transfer case is 13.1/8 inches across between the mounting flanges. But my right side's 5 3/4 inches from the center, and my left side 7 3/8 inches from the center of the case. So that's my notes, and that's what I know. Now I've got a plan, and the only thing to do now is follow the plan and try not to get off course. I'm going to hang this transfer case under the truck. Hopefully this heavy fucking thing doesn't land on me and hurt me. I haven't decided how we're going to lift it yet. But we'll figure it out one way or another. And when I say we, I mean me. Did you get all that? All right, here we go. Let's do some work.